Hey, John Sonmez from simpleprogrammer.com, and I am here with Ari Lamstein, who is a student of the blogging course that I put together, and one of the Simple Programmer community who has really like taken to heart a lot of the advice in the course and has actually built his own product and has shipped it and launched it. And I got an email from Ari the other day talking about the success of that, and I thought this would be kind of cool to share this, especially since I've been thinking about putting together a course more focused on entrepreneurship, on building an online business. I've been emailing, Ari and I have been corresponding back and forth about some of the aspects of building that, which I don't really cover in the blogging course necessarily, but it's kind of cool to see someone who's successful, and I thought that all of you could benefit from hearing Ari's story and hopefully to realize that it's something that is definitely possible for anyone to do and see. So anyway, welcome, Ari. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks a lot for having me, and thanks a lot for putting together your free course on blogging. It was definitely a big help for me when I first started out.
Awesome. Yeah. No, glad that it could help you. So tell me a little bit about who are you? What is your background? Yeah, let's get into that first.
My name is Ari Lamstein, and about 2 years ago, I started working on this very small software, data science, data visualization, whatever you want to call it, project. Basically, I was working at an online real estate company, and we had a lot of information about sales leads for different regions, states, counties, zip codes, prices of things, all of this spatial data. And I was using the R programming language to analyze a lot of it. And what I really needed was an easier, quicker way to make maps of that data. And so I built it and I shared it with the community. It's an open source project. It is a very funny name, so please bear with me. It's called Choroplethor. So Choropleth is, and maybe we could put up an image of a Choropleth map. Everyone knows what a Choropleth map is. No one's heard of the term. It's
right.
This is a presidential election here, so you're going to see that red state, blue state map, and that's a choropleth map. It's just any map that shows regions, in that case states, and expresses values for those regions through color, in that case red and blue for Republican and Democrat. So I needed to make countless choropleth maps of all sorts of regional data, and I released that as an open source project called Choropleth R, because it's in the R programming language. And I started doing some blogging and public speaking about it. And then when I left my company, I wanted to continue it, and I could because it was open source. And I didn't have a platform anymore because I wasn't at the company to talk about it. And that's when I discovered your blogging course. And I thought I should start blogging about this. It's a project that is under continuous development, and it needs a home to discuss updates and communicate with people. And I guess 6 months later, the next step after that was to create a free email course like yours based around the project.
Right.
It's called Learn to Map Census Data in R, which lets you make all these sorts of beautiful, informative maps about US demographics at the state, county, and zip code level, and look at historical data. And I followed that up in December with a paid course, all about all of the maps, 200 plus maps that Choroplethor ships with. And that's where I'm at now.
Awesome. Yeah, it's great to see you doing those steps to get to the point where, and now, I mean, you're selling that course, right? You just launched that course and you're making money from that course.
Yes. So in terms of numbers, I have about 1,500 people have taken my free course, Learn to Map Census Data in R, and the paid course grossed about $3,500 in the first month.
Oh wow, that's great. That's awesome.
Thank you.
So this is the question that I want to ask you, because I think everyone who just heard that is asking this question. They're like, how can I do this? Like, I mean, so I guess what I want to ask you is, did you think you could do this? Like when you first came into this idea, first started your blog, did this seem possible?
Absolutely not.
And why not?
The main reason why I'm here being candid with you about the numbers, and I'm planning to have a guest blog post on a very large, prominent R blog detailing the launch process and the numbers, is the main problem that I would like to solve in the world is to help open source software developers make money directly from the open source software they create, because by definition it's almost like one of those Buddhist koan problems of like, what's the sound of one hand clapping? You know, if you give the product away for free, the software, how can you possibly make money from it?
Right.
And in my case, so I think that's an open question in general that all open source developers are facing. And in my case, creating a course based on a paid course based on the software and the problem that the software solves, you know, it paid rent for at least 1 month. And I'd like to share that story with more open source developers, because I think many of them would be happy to, even if it's just $3,000 over the lifetime of the course, to make money to get something. And there's other benefits that I never expected, which is the consulting leads I get now are much higher quality. And I think that's simply because there is a paid course out there with the topic. So a different type of person is now interested in contacting me. And a third reason why I wanted to share that number is, and this is something I couldn't have possibly understood before I started making money from the course, is the course provides value to people. Like technology is very hard to learn. Like people aren't giving this to me as a donation. It takes a long time to learn how to do these very technical tasks. And that course solves an important problem for people. And so there's value for the open source community as well. In that case, the people who use the open source software.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's the key. Like, I think a lot of people just don't understand the key to making any kind of money is you're always providing value to someone. Like
exactly.
The more people you provide value to, the more money that you'll be able to make. And the other interesting thing about this, that, you know, I think I'd like to get your take on it, because at least for me, this is one aspect of it that a lot of people, I think, don't realize, which is how much. So you probably made pretty good money as a software developer. You probably make, you know, pretty good salary, especially, you know, you're highly technical, highly specialized. But how different does it feel, even though it's not a huge amount of money, to make money from your course, right? I want you to explain this to people, because someone who hasn't sold something online, right, doesn't understand the difference of that, even though it's just, they look at just the numbers and they're like, well, you know, but tell everyone, or tell me how much that, you know, how different that feels.
It's,
and why? Yeah.
That's such an interesting question. I'll tell you, I'll answer maybe a different question first, because the most prominent thing in my mind is how scary the launch was.
Yeah. Yep.
So, and I want to tell you a bit about the course has 2 price points. It's $99 for the base version. And by the way, John, if you want the free version, I'll give you the free version. I'll give you 100% discount. You've earned it. And then there's a secondary version if you want an hour consultation. It's $199.
Yep. But
you might ask, like, the most logical question is, how did you come up with those numbers? Because there's much, as someone who does data analysis for a living, I describe myself as a software engineer and data analyst. I'd like to have a great deal of confidence about those numbers, and I don't. And I'd like to tell you how they came about. So I used a software called Teachable for my course, and they have these wonderful webinars like to help first-time teachers. And the CEO runs them, and all he does is, well, there's one portion of each webinar, I've seen many of them, he just screams at the students, charge more, charge more. Everyone is underselling themselves. And he says, I'm not just saying that, I have proof. And he gave away, one course he gave away for free. He did for 25%, and then various price points, and everyone, the people who paid the most completed the course the most, which was surprising. And there were less refunds for the highest price point. So I said, instead of charging $25, which is the price of a book, after having him scream at me countless times, I'll charge $50. And then the night before the launch, I was getting drinks with my friend, and he said, Ari, he's my friend Tom, I'll call him out by name. Yeah. He said, Ari, there's very little difference between $49 and $99. He said, if someone's willing to pay $45, they're willing to pay $99. And so we were there. He was buying me drinks. We got a little drunk, and I said, fine, I'll go home and I'll change the number to $99. Yeah. And I did, and no one complained about the price. So that was probably the biggest, regarding the money, that was the biggest shock for me, that that money works that way. Right. And the reason is because I've been studying pricing quite a bit with Brennan Dunn, and he says people are paying for the shortcut. These are probably analysts who have to map their data, or it provides them a tremendous benefit at their job to be able to present this data visually, and you're helping them, and it helps them make money. Yeah. So that's one way that the prices work. And for me, you're right that the money is much less than I could make as a full-time software engineer if I went back to that. But it's incredible validation. Yes. I had been giving away the software free for 2 years, and I knew that scientists at the CDC and researchers all over the world had been using it, because they contact me and ask me for free technical support, which I provide. So actually getting money for it, it still shocks me. It's a shock. So that's a very long answer. I hope it's not too long, but it's something I've been thinking about a lot, and I'm still in the process of sort of working through this big issue of how to make money from giving the software away for free. Because for me, the biggest thing is I want to continue developing it. I want to write more software packages. And if I can't pay rent and health insurance every month from doing that, then I have to do something else, which means that software doesn't get to a level of maturity and doesn't stay up to date in the way that I think I want it to and the users want it to. So sorry, that's a very long-winded answer. I may not have accurately answered the original question you had, but it's the most accurate answer for how I'm thinking about money right now in terms of the products I make and so on.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm glad to hear the story behind it. It's funny too, because you say the pricing, and when you tell me the $99 and the $199 price point, the first thing that comes to my mind is that's too low. And then the $199, I think, oh my gosh, you're giving away consulting time for $100. That's crazy. You could be charging $1,000 for that hour of consulting time.
Let me tell you something. When I hear that, because I do hear that from you, and I'm in Brennan Dunn's course now, Double Your Freelancing Clients.
Yeah.
I mean, that's clearly the goal, because, you know, if I could pay rent and health insurance every month with pure products, I mean, from my perspective, there are so many exciting, I'm doing this not, I mean, writing open source software is interesting to me, but the most interesting, like the thing that excites me most is doing my own research with my own software. And I've done a bit of that. Like I did post on the demographics of, and maybe we can include a link to this. When I did my zip code mapping package, I hooked it up to this US Census Bureau, and you can see a segregation in San Francisco. Like the zip code, the whitest zip code and the blackest zip code are literally as far apart as possible within the city of San Francisco. And when you see it on a map, that's shocking. And I have a talk, I did some public speaking in November about mapping census data, which is all about these sorts of facts. Like, and then year over year, the biggest demographic changes have been in North Dakota because of fracking. And so their median income shot up through the roof. It's the largest increase in state income, median income. And they also have the sharpest decrease in median age, which presumably is because these young workers on these this oil equipment, this fracking equipment. And I'd love, and again, no one's paying me to do these analyses and publish them, but I'd love to, I'm searching for income sources that will fund more of this R&D. So that's basically the motivation. This is why I was willing to give up a large full-time income. Is to write the software. And from where I'm sitting, that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much high quality, interesting data, and reducing the cost of making it easier for analysts to map that data, to get that data and cross-reference it with their own proprietary data about where they're selling and so on, what are the demographics, is, I think, just, it's such an exciting area. So that's another motivation. Sorry, again, once I get going on this, I could talk all day about it. I may be a bad interviewee, and you can edit this out if you want, but
no. This is the best. This is what, you're excited about something, you've got a story to tell. This is what people want to hear, because everyone, I think, you're hitting on some key things that a lot of people are probably going to relate to. I talked about this in a post I did about the 4 levels of developer freedom, and I talked about how, the first level is you work for someone else, and the second level is everyone wants to be a freelancer, get out on their own, and then they realize they got a bunch of bosses, right? And then you hit that third level, it's like, if I could sell a product. And then you sell a product, and you realize that, well, you got to build the product that people will buy or they want. That's not necessarily what you want to do. And then you hit that 4th level is, when you get enough income coming in or enough freedom that you can support yourself, but you can do what you really want to do that doesn't necessarily make money. And I think that's where I hear you wanting to get to. Which
Absolutely.
Which is awesome. Which is, that's the whole road. That's the whole reason why I'm really focusing on helping developers now get on that entrepreneurial path, because that's the only way to get there, really, unless you win the Powerball lottery.
So as some guy who has some mathematical training, please do not buy the Powerball.
Here's something I don't understand, right? This just blows my mind. Okay, when it's like $100 million, okay, not everyone's buying tickets, but when it's $1 billion, now, as if it makes a difference, as if suddenly now, you're confident, as if now, if I wouldn't go to the convenience store if I'm only going to win $100 million, but if I'm going to win $1 billion, then I'm going to go and buy tickets. It doesn't make any sense to me, right? Like, I don't understand that mentality. Like, now that it's so much more, because $100 billion wasn't enough. $100 million wasn't enough. That would, but $1 billion, that'll get me out of my seat. I don't get it.
Here's my biggest problem is it's like the duplicity and immorality of the government in the lottery, because the immorality is that it's a regressive tax in that the poorest people buy the most tickets. So you're harming people. You're harming the people that the government should not be harming, right? By doing that, people who are wealthy who have this money that they could give to the government for nothing, are not doing it in terms of taxation. And then the immorality is that I can't run my own lottery. Only the government can. I don't understand why gambling is only legal for the government to do. That makes no sense to me at all.
Right.
So I don't like the lottery for a whole number of reasons.
It's an interesting concept, actually, to tie it right into our conversation too, because where I was talking about the money that you make, that you could obviously make more as just doing full-time software development, but you made this money from this launch. It kind of ties to the lottery thing, because I think it's the same, and this is something that a lot of people don't understand, and say, oh, I'd want to win the lottery. No, you wouldn't want to win the lottery, because the money that you make, that you like, there's the entrepreneurial thing of building the product, of having the idea, of building the website and getting the people on the email list, and being scared and not knowing the pricing and launching the thing and then being successful. Even if you only make $100, I mean, when you make some money that way, that money is so much more enjoyable than if someone dropped $1 million in your lap.
Absolutely.
And from someone who, most people think, oh no, I would rather just have $1 million dropped in my lap. And I'm, having seen it on both sides, like, no, you wouldn't. You have more value the $10 you made just purely from yourself than, because because it's validation. Like I think you said, it's like you made that money. So
so I have two things to say about that. I think that lotto winners, I read somewhere, have a very high rate of dying by homicide.
Yeah.
so just to clarify things, and I think especially a high rate of homicide by family members is what I heard.
Yeah.
And the money that I've made from this course is, you're absolutely right. When I was making, and I'll tell you, for me personally, I never felt, I guess I have felt some enjoyment from it, but what I really think in terms of the money is, when I was, I liked my job. I've always been pretty blessed. And I think in San Francisco, there's a lot of really high quality software teams. So I always felt that I was on a really high quality team with, generally pretty good people. But what I really wanted, what I woke up every day thinking is, I would gladly make half as much money to work half as much.
Yeah.
And then spend the other half of my time working on exactly what I'm doing now. And in some sense, this is less than ideal, because, here I am talking about, on this path that I'm on, I'm still trying to get to a point where, Brennan Dunn talks a lot about this, of not just freelancing, but being very confident you're going to be paying your bills month after month after month. I've made money and I'm not quite there. So it's less than ideal, but you're right. I mean, having happy customers based around software and ideas that I have put forth myself is, it's a totally different thing than salary income. It's right. And the reason why I wanted to be here on this podcast with you is I really wanted to reach more people who are maybe in that position I was 2 years ago, where I was spending my nights and weekends for my full-time job hacking away on this project. It was very exciting for me that a lot of people, of my coworkers or people in my peer group, were saying, this is a sort of a silly thing. Why would you spend your nights and weekends on this? And I saw it as very exciting. And on the internet, I could reach some people who were very excited about it as well. And I really want to reach them and tell them, first of all, take John's course about creating a blog. The trajectory that I see for going from a hobby open source project to income is have a blog for your project. And then the next step is try and, public speaking is very good, and running free workshops is very good, but read stuff by, for example, Nathan Barry, and create a free course yourself where you can get the email addresses of people who are interested in updates to your software and so on. A free course is very good for that. And then at some point, you'll probably have too much material to blog posts simply, and a free course simply won't be enough to do justice to the topic. And at that point, I think a paid course is a good next step. And I think that the money you get from the paid course will be good, but like I said, a month later, big household name companies are contacting me about consulting work. And that's something that I think could only happen with a paid course. So that's really I'm very happy to talk with you finally, and that's very nice, but I really want open source software developers to know that you can make rent money from a course around your topic. And the course that I'm doing is so unbelievably specific. I mean, people in R who want to make choropleth maps. And you had a blog post by one of the mentors in the Double Your Freelancing clients program, Philip Morgan, who's specialization. And
he's been on here. Yeah.
Have you interviewed him as well?
Yeah. He's been on here. Yep.
He's great. Yep. He's my mentor. I have, since him becoming my mentor, I've read everything. I've listened to his entire podcast of, it's called the Consulting Pipeline Podcast. And I've emailed him like you. I've pestered him hundreds of times for free advice. He's given it to me. Now he's my mentor. I get a lot of advice from him starting this Friday, I believe. And the niche, having a specific niche is good. I mean, I just gave a free webinar for people who bought my course. And someone asked me some question, and I went to my blog, and I was just going back and back and back to find the answer. And I was like, God, this guy who has this blog, he just doesn't shut up about statistical maps in R. Like you'd think he'd be done talking about it. And I'm like, no, I have so much more to say. So, and that's the thing about open source software. By definition, you're solving a very, very specific problem. And you may think that it's too specific, but in fact, that specificity winds up being a plus. As an example, I'm doing these statistical maps, and I use the Census Bureau and the unemployment data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics as my sort of go-to examples I blog to about a lot. And so take a guess, who do you think contacts me the most about the software? This is a fun exercise. Who do you think wants to create statistical maps?
Politicians, maybe. Big brands.
Yeah. So
trying to sell to different demographics.
I keep on expecting politicians to contact me. That hasn't happened yet, but the number one are epidemiologists. And
interesting. Okay.
So the people who map diseases. And there's a lot of them out there. I had to look up, is an epidemiologist what I think it is? And, I was right. So these guys, they're like the CDC runs all these things about where sick people and what kind of diseases are where. And there's a lot of people, I guess, in private industry who map this stuff too. And this software really helps them. And the other people are economists who are mapping unemployment or things that correlate with income and unemployment. So they're constantly mapping stuff as well. So that was a big surprise for me, because when you start, I think, and the message there for other people who are either considering creating an open source project or working in depth is your users, a common phrase maybe you say or other people say is your customers aren't you. And so the people who wind up using this software have a different background than me, which, of course, that's surprising the first time it happens. It's always surprising, I think, for everyone when you develop something and the customers have a different background or different needs than you expect, but there's still some sort of meeting of the minds there. That's been very surprising and enjoyable too.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, you're definitely right about the specialization. This is the thing that people doubt the most, I think, is no one really, very few people realize how large the world is, and just, every specialty, like being more specialized is the key. I remember when you first told me, when I was first getting the emails from you from replying from the blogging course, and I saw that you're specializing in R and in the map, I was like, oh, this is perfect. This is exactly the kind of you want to specialize in, because there's going to be, I mean, the awesome thing about what you're doing is the person that's looking to use R to create the map, I forgot the name,
Choropleth. It's the worst.
Choropleth.
Whoever invented this, like 100 in the 1800s, he did me a great disservice.
Yeah.
He could have called it pretty colored map, but he went with Choropleth.
the Choropleth map, because but in some way, the person who's looking for it, maybe they search in Choropleth map R or whatever, and they're going to come up with your site now for sure. I would bet, but when they see that, they're like, this is exactly what I want, right? Because it's not, this large thing. So they're clicking that buy button like crazy. And that's the thing is, when, it depends. So like, you're talking about the pricing and you have to start off at the smaller pricing. At some point, like when you build the confidence, you'll realize that someone would instantly buy what you're selling for $1,000 because when you solve someone's problem, they're like, I'm going to make more than that money from that, I mean, but it's a gradual thing. But my point is really that you're so specific that you're solving the exact problem that someone has. And when you solve someone's exact problem, there's so many people out there that have that problem. So you've got an audience, and when you reach them so well, that's the thing that makes the better business than, yeah.
I'll tell you another thing about pricing. So when I told you I was originally going to sell my course for $25, and then through peer pressure, I went up to $49 and then finally $99.
Yeah.
But the reason for $25 was to compare it to a print book. But when you're up at $99, you start comparing it to other things, such as professional training, like a professional workshop. So or a college credit, like a college course.
Right.
Look at tuition. People say, oh, all these educational materials are free, but look at tuition for a private university. So,
right.
And I'm not knocking private universities. I'm just trying to point out to people who are struggling with this issue right now that there are all sorts of price points for all sorts of different services out there.
Yeah. And in the places where you're helping someone to make money, that's where it makes a huge difference.
Yes.
I mean, I've invested, what I've thought would be at one point in my life would have thought have been a lot of money, but I've bought a course for $1,000 to $2,000 because I know I'm going to make more than that money because it's helping me to make money. It's an obvious investment it's a tool. And, when you look at it that way, then that price point, it really does change. It's amazing how much, I know that I'm underselling some of my stuff now as I'm realizing this, but you kind of got to start somewhere and realize that where people put the value, but yeah, that's awesome.
There's one other message I want to give to the other open source developers who, like I said, are maybe debating whether to put more into their project or or whatnot, I wish I had the confidence to specialize sooner. And I wish, for example, at one point, I guess there's two messages. At one point, I was debating whether I could specialize in R, whether, for example, I had to learn Python. I've programmed for many years in C++, PHP, MySQL, and now R. And Python is widely becoming used for data analysis. And I thought, well, if I want to, go out there, should I also learn Python as well?
Right.
And I think that was a mistake. I want to learn Python at some point. I'm sure I will, and I'll do interesting projects in Python at some point in the future. But in terms of starting my business, I didn't need to do that at that point. I could have just doubled down on a project that had already been validated as being useful to people and started to monetize around that.
Right.
So I wish I did that sooner.
And the key thing, and you're absolutely right, because by specializing so much, you hit the nail on the head. It's you've got the exact customer. You're going to hit that exact problem. And then as you build up, and see, now you're in the phase where, I think you still have a lot of depth here, but you'll eventually probably hit this point where you've got enough people coming in, you've got enough authority, right, in this area and you'll be able to spread out a little bit and be more of a general, instead of being just the R. I'm going to say the Coropleth guy again. That you'll be able to, maybe then you include Python, and you're like, now it's more of the data analyst. Maybe like it can go and grow from there. But being more specific to start, we'll look at simple programmer, right? It's a much broader thing now. Of course, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I didn't have someone telling me or helping me with. I just figuring out as I go. So I didn't have a plan. But now looking at it, it's like, well, it makes sense now. But I think that's the key. Is like you start out with that very specific specialty, and then you can kind of grow and branch out and be more broad. But people try to be broad and generalists, and you just can't get any traction that way, and that's the problem.
Exactly. I think it comes down to two concepts that I heard. One is you're trying to find customers. It's easier to find customers when you specialize. And the second is what you talk about a lot in your blogging course, which is inbound marketing and the value of inbound marketing. Those conversations with customers who contact you are qualitatively different than when you're applying through the door of a company. And so, of course, another specialization that I'd love to do more on and blog more on, which I haven't blogged about this at all, is the applying R to analyzing MySQL databases for modern web companies who have users and join users based on their activity. And that's what I did mostly at my last job. But it's harder to talk about that because all those databases are private. The Census Bureau is all public data. So that's how I started here. But it's obvious to me. I want to be talking about other stuff as well, but I just haven't tapped this market. And another point I want to make is my software for making Choropleth maps isn't perfect. It uses right now it uses a graphing library called ggplot2, which isn't interactive. So you can't highlight over the regions and get data that way. There are no tooltips. And that's as time goes on, that becomes a bigger and bigger limitation. And sometimes I fret about that. But there are a lot of people out there who like the advantage of it being in ggplot2. And like that it's not static, and like that it doesn't do some of the things maybe they don't like about the interactive maps. So even though the software doesn't solve all problems for all people, that doesn't stop it being valuable to other people. And I think that was something I didn't understand when it came to charging money. I didn't understand that wouldn't be a problem, you know?
Right. So real quick here, I think we're running out of time, but I wanted to go through the process for everyone that's kind of listening, that, you know, because we, you know, hopefully we've convinced some, especially some open source developers, that this is possible. You can actually do this, because you've done this. I mean, you came from a state of this doesn't seem possible to,
Yes,
hey,
absolutely.
now it's your reality, right? You are selling a course and making money, and you have an audience. So let's, maybe if you could walk through the steps of building this kind of online business from the blog to launch. Just, you know, I mean, we don't have time to go into a lot of depth here, but just so people get an idea of what this strategy is, because the same strategy, I mean, you're employing the same strategy that I do with Simple Programmer, and you know, they'll see it when they when you lay it out.
I think, well, one thing that may be different about my situation than others is that I already had a project that was fairly popular. I mean, it had been installed. I don't know. I'd already spoken at conferences about it. Let's put it that way.
Right.
And then, you know, when I went out on my own, I had this question of how to grow it and monetize it. So I think I started with that, and I already knew people in the industry who used it, and who, the open source community, I want to point out, is very supportive in general of other people's projects. They like to encourage other people to be successful in their projects. And when it came time for me to go out on my own and be serious, the first step I did was to create a blog to talk about updates. And I syndicated my blog, my blog, at a website called rbloggers.com, r-bloggers.com. And that gets a very large audience of R enthusiasts reading it every day. So that was probably the biggest thing to help my blog not be, to get an audience for my blog. And then the next thing I did was to do some guest blogging on authoritative R blogs to get a larger audience. And I did that. And then the next step after that was to create a free course about how to use my software. And I want to point out that my free course was basically a version of a free workshop I ran in person. Right. I recommend everyone who's serious about this to join Toastmasters and learn the basics of public speaking and go out and be in front of real people. I think a problem I see in some online, well, there's a lot of advice out there for marketing, online marketing. And if you just follow that, I think you'll miss a lot, because being in front of people and communicating with real people and doing public speaking is very valuable. And it helps for getting to know people who are influencers in your area. And the free course is really, that changed everything overnight. Because
and
data.
And just to clarify, the free course, you're giving away this free course via email, right? So someone signs up and they get this access to the course, and you're delivering that course, right?
Yes. And then from a business development standpoint, I have the email addresses of people who like my content.
Yep.
And the reason, when I say the course changed my life overnight, I think I got 600 signups in my first weekend.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I can trace that back to 2 people on Twitter who were not R programmers. One was a mapping expert. Yeah. She runs a great mapping website. And all of a sudden that shocked me, because I thought, I'm an R mapper, I'm an R programmer who's playing around with maps, but here's like a professional map person. And, you know, it was like that scene in that Mike Myers movie where they say, we're not worthy, we're not worthy. And another one was a very famous data visualization expert who'd written several books, and he tweeted about my free course. So that changed everything overnight. And all of a sudden I had different niches that I was sort of putting my foot in the water in. And then after that, the next big milestone, I did public speaking after that, but I think it wasn't as helpful for business development as I would have expected.
Right.
And then creating the paid course after that through Teachable was the next very big milestone. And I have a blog post, by the way, because I like contributing to helping other open source developers. That's something I haven't monetized at all. It's just something I do because I think it's very important. I have a blog post I did on as a guest blog on a big R forum, on a big R blog, where I walk through how to create a online course. And I linked to your free course actually at some point in that blog post. I think I mailed you about that.
Oh yeah, yep. Appreciate that.
And so I'm now working on another blog post where I talk about like the basics of launching, how I launched my course, and I think that will be of value to people as well.
Awesome. Yeah. It's I appreciate you sharing that. I wanted to really hit home the point to people, like just the idea that it's, you've got the blog, you get the email addresses, and then you eventually you launch a course, and you
yes,
that, and that's the primary, like that's how both of us make the money primarily from our is we're providing a lot of valuable content to people. We're giving them something free in exchange for their email address, and then we have the people that are interested in what we're producing that we can sell a product to when we launch that product. And that's like it's like the magic, like, oh, okay, I can make money online too. I can build a business. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The hardest part. There's a lot of hard parts in the beginning. I mean, I don't want to.
Of course, yeah. It's not that simple. That's just.
And I want to just briefly say for the audience what the hardest parts. For me, the hardest part is you're really putting yourself out there.
Yes.
And some things aren't going to go well,
right.
but it's never as bad as you imagine it might be.
Right.
I want to get your opinion on something, because
sure.
I was really shocked that I made $3,500 in the first month from this course. And I want to get your opinion on this. What I'm finding is that for individuals, like individual contributors, it's very easy for them to buy a course, but it's hard to sell them consulting services. I feel like the consulting services is a different audience. Maybe it's like managers who can write checks for a company. Individuals maybe are willing to buy like a coaching service, but that never took off for me as a business. I think I tried to do that because John Morrow, he has this great course on blogging that I bought called Boost Blog Traffic. It had a lot of very valuable content in it, but his monetization suggestion was launching a coaching service, and that might be good for some blog niches, like a parenting niche or a weight loss niche. But I found that software engineers who were like reading a blog about statistical maps in R, it never really took off in a way that the course took off. And that was a very big surprise for me. And I'm wondering if you could but like I said, now that I have a course, the consulting leads I'm getting through inbound marketing are much higher value.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, I'm asking all the experts I know, people who are farther along than me, to comment on the difference between selling a product and a service, and where they found one is better than the other.
Well, I tend to, to think without, going too deep into it, but
no. I want you to go in depth. Come on. This is my secret agenda. This is me interviewing you. I'm sorry, but I'm not going to let you get off the hook. I want at least a fairly in-depth answer here.
All right.
Sorry.
All right. So I would say that you're going to have the most success from selling a service as a product. This is called productized, consulting, or productization of a service. So what this really means is like how can you take something that is normally a service that maybe you'd bill by the hour and make a package out of it, and then sell that as a product that someone can buy. So even though you're technically, when you're delivering, you're actually building something, or you're consulting, or you're trading your hours, your actual hours for this thing, can you make that into a product that someone can buy? And that usually is going to you're going to have more success with, I think, overall, in its scales, right? And then you can market it better, because you can have a sales page, you can have this, and it takes a lot of the overhead as well. So that's where I come into it. I really don't like. I mean, I really prefer. I think further down the path is, at least in my mind, is going down the product path as much as possible, because I don't like trading time for money. I'd rather build a thing, and I like to do things where my time is being leveraged to a high degree, so that I build a thing, and then it benefits me for a long time, and so it has an exponential effect as opposed to the linear effect. So I don't know if does that answer.
Can you please give me an example of, like, speaking in the evolution of your own business development, that is when, maybe can you point to a time when you did that, or maybe the first time that you created a productized consulting thing and you were like, hey, this is really working. And can you tell me about what you were doing before that, so I could see the evolution of how you applied that in just one example? Because I think this is really this is very valuable information for me, as you could imagine. As someone who's just...
So I really don't even do a lot of the productized consulting, just because I don't do a lot of consulting, because my time is now spent on creating and running the business rather than that. But I was doing coaching, like one-on-one coaching, at an hourly rate for some period of time, and that worked out fine, except that it's the scheduling, it's the negotiating, it's the setting up the thing. So finally, actually, I don't even advertise it, because again, this is. But I do offer coaching as productized service. Most people don't know that, because I have never advertised on here. So this is the first time that people are hearing this, probably. But I do when people ask about it, which is, so I think it's at simpleprogrammer.com/coaching-services. But anyway, I've packaged that up into coaching, and I believe that my coaching is $2,000 a month now for. And I've got basically 3 calls that I'll give you per month, and I'm selling it that way now. But again, I tend to shy away from it, because I really even don't want to. I'm still not even really taking on very many people with that, because even though that might seem like, oh well, that's great, you could build a whole business around that, I don't want to really, like, I'm selective in that aspect. But that's an example of how you could do that. And now, it's someone can go and they can go to that sales page, and they can see, this is what the requirements are to do the coaching. This is the options that you have, the packages that you can buy. And when you buy this package, this is what you're getting. You're getting, 3 phone calls, unlimited emails, whatever the particular thing is in that case.
I see.
So you could have it done for you. I mean, you could have something like, let's make it specific to you, right? So let's say you could say, you could have it done for you, maybe like, I don't even know what the pricing, like, you'd have to kind of research the pricing, but I'm just going to throw a number out here. Let's say that you have a package for $1,997, $2,000, right? Someone can buy. And what it is you will go and you will take a basic set of data that someone has, and you will make a
Choropleth
map using your software, right? And that's it. And you could kind of outline, this is what, I can take some this data for you, and this, and maybe it's a $5,000 or $10,000 package or whatever it is, depending on, and maybe you have different price points along the line as way, and you have different options. I'll create this and I'll do this. I'll create this and plus you'll get a copy of my course so that you can do this. I'll offer you 6 months maintenance, whatever it is, but you can basically productize it that way. And then it's a package that you're able
I
to
see. I like that idea. And I want to just, because like I mentioned, one other point for the audience, just as an aside, once I started selling something, I became less hesitant to buy things, which is ironic. Yeah. Like buying business consulting services on my end is no longer something I'm scared of. I'm less scared of people like ripping me off now that I'm selling something. Of course they'll give a refund, as long as there's some like modicum of like respectability about it. But Brennan talks a lot about selling an outcome as opposed to a service. So what you're describing there is you're selling an outcome as opposed to just hire me for some unknown number of hours with some unknown outcome that we would have to decide ahead of time. Here you're basically saying, oh, you have some data you want to make a map of, boom, And for me, the details of my business would be, in fact, this is a course I'm thinking of creating now, is if you have a custom map that you need with some custom geometry, how to hook it up to my system. So I can totally see a interesting sales page based on what you just said. That's really interesting. So thanks. That perfectly answered my question, actually.
Awesome. Well, I gotta wrap it up here. I've actually got another interview. Wow. doing interviews today, but yeah, I'm glad to help, and I really do think that's the way I would do it with it. The other one quick thing I'd say about that is also it cuts down that overhead, right, of negotiating and getting on the Skype call and doing the consultation, and then so because they know exactly what they're getting, you don't have to do that. They can just click buy, and then before we wrap up here, can you give for everyone that's interested in your blog, I want to give you a chance to promote your blog and your course, and so go ahead and let people know where they can find you, where they can find your blog, where they can find your course if they want to learn more about R. And
great. My blog, so my name is Ari Lamstein. My website is at arilamstein.com. And if you go there, you'll see that I also have on the front page, you'll see my free course, a link to it, Learn to Map Census Data in R, which will walk you through creating statistical maps and analyzing US Census data at the state, county, and zip code level, including looking at historical data. And my blog is at arilamstein.com/blog. And there I talk about updates to my the various software packages that I write. And those are not limited to US Census data. I talk about World Bank data, US unemployment data, and I am hoping to continue on in this specialization of analyzing public data sets in R and mapping them.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks again, Ari, and I wish you the best success. And let me know how it goes. I think you've got a long way you can go with this for sure, and raise those prices.
Thank you very much. Hey, is it possible? I know that I wasn't able to put my name on the bottom. Is there a way to, maybe we could add that in later?
Yeah, I'm going to talk to my editor. I'm going to see if I can get a link on there. At the very least, we'll get the description, but yeah, we'll get something figured out. All right,
John, thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. Take care.
Bye-bye.